Good afternoon and welcome to the Pittsburgh Land Bank of Friday, September 16th, 2022. We'd ask first that we would take the roll. Is there someone to do that? All right, you're
right here for you,
All
having
right.
some internet
All
trouble. All right, guys. Reverend Ricky Burgess.
Here.
Dr. Jamil Bey.
Here.
Councilman Daniel Lavelle.
Here.
Councilman Bobby Wilson.
Here.
Director Steve Mazza.
Here.
Director Wanda Wilson. Director Karen Breen.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. All right, that takes us to public comment. Any members of the public, either online, remotely, or here that wants to address the Land Bank Board, you will have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and identify your neighborhood. Is there one? I have to say it at least twice. Is there any comment? Seeing none, that takes us to the approval of the June and July minutes of this year. Both were emailed to you, and you had a chance to preview it, read it. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Is there any conversation about the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers? Thank you very much. Opposers, nay. That brings us to my report, 3 things. First of all, a small delegation from the Pittsburgh Land Bank again had the opportunity to attend the 2022 Reclaiming Vacant Properties Conference, learn about the latest strategies to address vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties. Bobby and I, in fact, were at a breakfast conference with Detroit, Chicago, and maybe Cleveland. I think there was 4 cities. It was Cleveland, in 4 cities, and saw how aggressive they were, and ideas to bring back. We have a revised board schedule for monthly meetings to accommodate holidays, and Mr. Lavelle and I will be involved with the council budget hearings coming up soon, so we have to adjust because the chamber will be used for those budget meetings, and so we thank the staff for revising that schedule for us. I am sad to announce the resignation of Senator Wayne Fontana as a member of the Board of Directors. Senator Fontana has worked tirelessly to advocate for both this land bank and for the changes to the municipal claims and tax lien law to expedite our powers. That critical legislation allows Pittsburgh Land Bank to acquire property at judicial tax sale along with other changes so that we could actually use the sheriff's sale versus the treasurer's sale, which means that the properties would come to us clean of title. And so we are still pursuing that. That was a glitch, and when they did the land bank law, they were supposed to do 2 bills, and they only passed 1, which is allow us to form the land bank, but didn't pass the second bill, which gives us the expedited powers for the second-class cities like us, who have a dual way of obtaining land. Unfortunately, the treasurer sale does not give us a clean title. It gives us a quick deed, but then that property, that deed has to be cleaned over several months, and we don't have the expedited powers to clean it any faster, really. Well, okay. And so I will first, I'll turn it over to your staff updates. I think that's in for me.
Thank you, Chairman Burgess. Moving on to the staff updates, our first update is welcome to the Pittsburgh Land Bank Manager, Sally Stadelman. In her previous roles, Sally worked with City Council, the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections, and worked closely with the City of Pittsburgh on issues impacting those experiencing homelessness. She comes to the Land Bank with a wealth of knowledge and experience across the City of Pittsburgh through her personal and professional connections with community organizations. We're excited to bring Sally into this role and continue advancing the Land Bank's missions and values. Now I adhere to Sally for a brief speech.
Good afternoon, members of the board. It's an honor and a privilege to sit before you today as the new manager of the Pittsburgh Land Bank. I look forward to serving you and the residents of City of Pittsburgh, as well as working with City Council, the Mayor's Office, the URA, the Finance Department, City Planning, our Law Department, PWSA, the School District, Allegheny County, and of course, our residents, nonprofits, community groups, and community development corporations to build better, more effective, efficient, and transparent land recycling systems that work for our residents and communities here in the City of Pittsburgh. We've got quite a few partners there, huh? Over the years in the positions I've held at the city, I've spoken to many residents who are frustrated by grass that's not being cut and homes that sit vacant and abandoned for years. Not only are these problems pervasive throughout our neighborhoods, residents often have little recourse to address these issues. Their options are to call 311 again, apply for Adopt-A-Lot, file conservatorship, join your community board and spend hundreds of hours advocating for funding to rehab maybe just one house. Or you can wait until the structure becomes so dangerous and dilapidated that the city's forced to tear it down. I don't know about you, but I am tired of telling residents that we don't have real comprehensive solutions for the thousands of vacant properties we have in our city, and I am so excited to be in a role where I can be a part of that change. Now, please don't mistake my enthusiasm for naivete. I know that we have great challenges before us that are complex and will take time to untangle, and to fund the needed staff and resources we need to bring effective change to our land recycling systems. Change is slow and incremental, but I have also watched so many of our departments over the years transform backward systems. Who would have thought in 2014 we would have online permitting, or that our single traffic engineer could become an entire department dedicated to designing and implementing complete streets? So we have 90 incredible neighborhoods in the city of Pittsburgh full of resilient residents, working hard, raising families, building communities, and making this city a great place to live. Every neighborhood deserves to be as beautiful on the outside as it is on the inside. With that, I am really looking forward to working with all of you. And back to you, Emily.
Thank you, Sally. Well said. Our next staff update will be an update to the GRB Law contract, a donation agreement on behalf of the City of Pittsburgh. GRB Law has worked diligently to file petitions to quiet title on city-owned properties in 5 cohorts. For Cohort 1, final hearings are scheduled for later this month on the 27th and the 28th. For Cohort 2, service is complete and we are waiting for a response from defendants. For Cohorts 3 and 4, petitions initiating the case have been filed. We are awaiting service. And for Cohort 5, petitions are yet to be filed initiating the case. GRB Law has found 2 contested cases, one in Bloomfield Garfield, the other in Oakland, and are processing these cases accordingly to have these properties reach free and clear title. On the following slide, you will see a list of properties that are scheduled for final hearing in late September. We expect these properties to have a positive outcome with free and clear title and be able to be marketed free of encumbrances. I'll pause for questions. Moving on, our next update is to the amendments posed for the Tri-Party Cooperation Agreement. As a reminder, these amendments allow the Land Bank, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, and the City of Pittsburgh to engage in mutual land transfers of real property. Currently, the Land Bank is unable to access city-owned property, so these amendments are imperative to our mission to return unproductive, real property back onto the tax rolls and back to beneficial reuse. I'll pause for questions.
Yeah, so currently it's being held in City Council, and is there? So these amendments would have to be done at the table at City Council. So we'll partner with. Well, first I think we need a briefing. Is there an attempt to? So that attempt just needs to be made to follow through on the ask at the City Council table. So I think that'll move us along.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, thankfully the Land Bank has gained someone with a lot of experience in City Council, and we're going to move forward full force to pass these amendments.
connect this to the earlier, so the State Bill 811 that you mentioned that Senator Fontana has been working on, does that, its relation to this, is this going to help, is this the other piece, this is the city council piece to that?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Dr. Bay. So tied to MICDL, that municipal claims and tax lien law, is the three taxing bodies agreement. And that is an agreement that the Land Bank will pursue in the future once the MICDL amendments are passed to then have existing agreements with the taxing authorities to forgive outstanding back taxes on property. The tri-party cooperation agreement is a step before this, and this will allow the Land Bank to access city property. As Chairman Burgess explained, in the Land Bank's history, there was a lot of legislation, our enabling ordinance, but we were missing a few other pieces of key legislation. Tri-party amendments are a piece of that to allow us to access the city's inventory of unproductive property, and the three taxing bodies agreement is yet to come in the future. And we are waiting for our MICDL amendments, which we will hear an update about in later slides.
Yeah, and Dr. Bay, rather than tying them together, I'd think of them as two separate pipelines, where MICDL's going to let us turn on a pipeline to receive new property, and the tri-party agreement's going to let us turn on a pipeline to receive existing city property that's been publicly owned for quite a while.
Any further questions? The next update,
keep the board informed when, this is before council, just to send us an email and let us know.
Absolutely, Director Wilson. We plan to have 1 pages on each of the Land Bank's legislative items, and we plan to provide those to board members via email and in person upon request. Moving on to our property updates. The Land Bank owns a property in Larimer, District 9 of the 12th Ward, 243 Meadow Street. Currently, the Land Bank and the URA team are pursuing a candidate for a non-competitive disposition and will inform the Board of Directors during a briefing session as the selection process progresses. The Land Bank is excited to move forward with its non-competitive disposition for properties that qualify for an eligible end use. The second property the Land Bank is pursuing a disposition for is in Mount Washington, District 2, 19th Ward, 6 Boggs Avenue. Currently, we're pursuing a limited request for information on existing applications for that property, and will inform the Board of Directors during a briefing session as that selection process progresses. I'll pause for questions. Moving on to the finance report. On hand to answer questions, we have Damara Carter from the URA's Finance Department. The first item is a ratification of expenses for the 2022 Reclaiming Vacant Properties Conference. On this slide, you will see costs billed to the PLB, including outstanding expenses expected to be reimbursed in the next couple of weeks. And the staff is looking to ratify these expenses from a trip that was beneficial not only for our board members, but our new and old Land Bank staff in pushing the Land Bank's mission forward. I'll pause for questions.
There's also one of the members of the organization, sponsoring organization, Kim Graciani, was one of the founders of the Land Bank in Pittsburgh. Also, a person who did our technical assistance when it was set up. And one of her recommendations was that no matter what, that the Land Bank should attend the annual. It's really not annual. I think it's 18 months. At the 18 months conference, it was one of her recommendations that we have followed. And then every time we have been there, she has arranged special meetings for us with other more advanced land banks, which are sort of once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, such as the one we had during this trip was with the 3 other cities that I mentioned, Detroit, Cleveland, and Chicago, and had a rather private with their staff and directors to get a sense of that. So it is something that we will do. We will honor our. It's funny. I'm the last. Daniel Lavelle and I are the last men standing. Right, that we were here from the beginning. We remember all these things. I guess you remember too, Doctor, most of this stuff. And we were here, and so mostly everybody's gone. And that remembers these sort of informal arrangements and agreements. But there is in front of you. Is this the time to approve it? Is that this? We're at that point. If there's no conversation, I need a motion to approve the expenditures.
So moved.
Need a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposers, nay. That brings us, keep going.
On the screen is the URA PLB balance sheet as of August 31st, 2022. URA PLB income statement as of August 31st, 2022. PLB expenditures as of August 31st, 2022. This is slide 1 of 2. Councilman Wilson.
I know every property is different, but what's the like average cost per property to clear title?
That's a good question. So per our donation agreement, the average cost to quiet title is around $1,250. However, sometimes we receive responses from defendants for a quiet title action, and this becomes a contested quiet title action. From there, we move forward with outside counsel and their hourly billing rates based on paralegal, associate, or partner. And depending on the property and its history, which unfortunately in Pittsburgh can be quite complicated at times, the cost can be adjusted.
I'm curious to know how high it goes.
We also have counsel from the URA, Matt Sanders, online to answer questions much better than I can pertaining to legal matters.
Related to that question, do you have an idea? So what's the higher range? What would be an expensive?
I defer to Matt Sanders on that.
So that's kind of a difficult question to answer. If we do get an answer to a complaint for quiet title, depending on the defense, we might have to schedule a hearing with a judge to discuss the matter, which, obviously requires us to pay for attorney and staff time. If we need to, enter into some sort of mutual agreement to have any of the liens go away, sometimes you do have to settle to remove some of the liens from title. So to answer that question is pretty difficult. What I can say is that most quiet title actions are not answered. So it's not something that we run into very often. Like in the current situation with GRB law, I think we have over, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Emily, but we have over 50 petitions to quiet title out right now, and only 2 have been answered. So I can't give you like a really reasonable range. It depends on what's in those answers, but I know that it's not very common.
So do you have access to a single example where you can say one that, for example, that was contested, what it cost?
I think that we can probably find one. I mean, we could probably find a case that, a quiet title action that was complicated and try to provide you with, maybe like the worst case scenario, if that's what you're interested in.
Right, that's what it sounds like. We're trying to understand.
So let me ask this question. So what could possibly happen if there's something that was missed by us in a title search, that a descendant or somebody from the family can come back and try to file some sort of suit and ask for money or damages that they should be paid because we missed this, and then on top of that, we have to pay for the legal fees, so that's gonna cost us even more money. So that's basically what that is?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that there could be like a chain of title issue in the past that we have to get through. There could also be other liens on the property that are from, maybe like from the state, that we have to work with the state to try to remove. So it's not always a chain of title issue. It can also just be a lien issue itself. But those are rare. Yeah, but if we run into those situations, there will be legal costs as well as potential costs to remove those liens from the title.
So if we don't do our due diligence, it's gonna cost us money, and say hypothetically down the road, it could be a historical question where that property we didn't research well enough, that's gonna cost us even more money. So that's my concern. How do we do a better job without the legislation to try to help us get through that? And then if the legislation gets passed, why wouldn't that be contested, saying that, well, you missed that and the legislation passed, and they sue you on that legislation? So is it possible? I mean, I'm just throwing out some hypotheticals. Anything's possible in this day and age with a lot of attorneys and billable hours, so.
So I'm having a hard time hearing you, Councilman. Sometimes it's not really a due diligence issue.
Okay.
Like, you can order a title report, and whenever we do these quiet title actions, the first step is to issue a title report and to serve every single defendant on that title report. The problem with real estate is that sometimes it's just messy and not everything on the record is totally correct. And there's certain liens that, certain parties like municipalities and states don't have to, but don't let us clear them through a quiet title action. So it's not necessarily like if we're not doing our due diligence, because in the statute there is a requirement for which parties need to be served off of the title report. Sometimes it's just certain properties, because of their history, are more challenging than others.
Okay, sometimes I overthink things, but I want us to be prepared for anything can happen, anything goes. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions on the finances, if I could.
Wanda.
A lot of the cost of clearing title on properties was discussed when you were considering we had some preliminary numbers for a budget for the year for 2022, and we still don't have one in place. So I was wondering what status of that was, and the variety of sources of funding that we had talked about in that budget. And then my other question is about is the income, so there's an income statement, it's not a budget to actual because we don't have a budget for this year, but there's one large item in there, the administrative fees, management fees, but it's all in one lump sum in March. And is that the URA fees for administering the land bank and the other staffing costs? And is that always going to just be billed once a year? Or is the board going to be able to see some regular monthly charges and what goes into those? Any kind of backup?
So the 107-425 is actually from 2021. And the way that the land bank and the URA set their agreement is that we bill quarterly. So it was, the 107 is just that for last year's admin fee to get approved, it just took a while and it didn't come out until then. This year, I did send a bill for the first and second quarter. It just still haven't gotten approved yet. So it's just when you guys approve it and then when we take the fee out, how it's come. But I did send the invoice for the first 2 quarters, but it's the way that it was written. We are to bill you guys quarterly.
Right, I appreciate the explanation. I think that we need to see that on a quarterly basis, and we were provided a list of expenses on 2 slides here, and I didn't see that listed there. So that's not acceptable in my view in terms of the board having a full view of the full cost of operations. So could we have that remedied? We need to see on a regular basis what the full cost of operating the land bank, and that's a large cost that we need to see. So if you sent a bill, why would it not be on the list of vendors?
It wasn't paid.
I-
It is in the bill.
Well, then we
So
should
the
be
list
seeing,
that-
we
the
should
list
be
that
seeing
you
an accounts
see-
receivable statement and an accounts payable statement, and if we have accounts payable outstanding, we need to see them.
I'm guessing it's because of the transition of staff. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that there was, because of our transition of not having a dedicated staff member, and for Diamante leaving the URA, I think that may be a reason that some of the records are incomplete at the moment or not up to date. Now that we have a staff member to take care of those concerns directly, I think that'll be accommodated. But that's my guess. That's my just guess of this. Wanda, I
Well,
don't know.
that's one of the things that, when we went with utilizing services of the URA, that was such a, made to be such a compelling, was that, there's lots of people at the URA to be able to handle, so it's not just one person doing things. And this has been something that we've talked about at board meetings where other members of the URA staff have heard this issue, and board members have, so, that might be the case, but as we're having the URA, in agreement with the URA to provide the staffing services, it's not just dependent on one person. There are a lot of people, many whom are on this call, who work at the URA whose responsibility is to provide, the administrative services for the land bank.
Yeah, Wanda, I think you're spot on here, and I really appreciate that you've brought this up and are pointing it out, and I can commit now that we will have this cleared up for you by the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Any other concerns? Okay. Next is what, the legislative updates?
One more item for our finance report are staff's recommendations for financial accounting services. The board of directors saw this item in their board packets at the July meeting, but in absence of a quorum, this will now be a voting item for this month's meeting. In your board packets, you would have received the full annual cost of Bookminder's fee, an estimate for these services, and the URA's fee. As the land bank continues to ramp up its efforts in land transactions and recycling, staff believe it best to foster relationships with existing accounting staff, who will have a deeper understanding of the work and mission of the land bank when it comes to recycling vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated property back to productive use. You will find here, based on the monthly charges, additional software fees, that the annual cost of Bookminders is around $11,000 annually. On the following slide, we will see the cost annually of the urban redevelopment's financial services is around $9,620 annually. Land bank staff believe that the URA accounting department will better meet the accounting needs of the Pittsburgh Land Bank and be able to provide the board of directors with the financial information they require to make the PLB a force for change in Pittsburgh's over 90 communities and neighborhoods. Director Wilson, I want to assure you that now, with increased capacity and staffing, we will not only be finalizing a 2022 budget for the Pittsburgh Land Bank, but reevaluating the cooperation agreement between the URA and the Land Bank to ensure continued progress for the Pittsburgh Land Bank's future as an affiliate organization of the Urban Redevelopment Authority.
So would the budget come at the next the next meeting then, or would we see it ahead of time? Maybe Sally, you could brief us on that as you guys know what your plan is. And I would just make one observation. I guess it's certainly I think the URA probably can do the accounting cheaper than bookminders, and it's probably even less than what you have here, because a lot of the things that you have listed here are not actually the same things that bookminders does. So so it's like you're not really comparing apples to apples in terms of, like, you have a lot of people listed on this that aren't doing bookkeeping services. Like staff accountant, is who would really be doing the bookkeeping the way bookminders would be doing it, I'm thinking.
But to make a note to this is the agreement that was in place between, and this is how it was, the agreement was written between the URA and Land Bank. So this is how your agreement is to us.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that these are the services of URA staff who support the operations of the land bank, but to show that in comparison to bookminders, like there are more things listed on this slide of people who are doing things to support the land bank's operations that bookminders would not do. So it's not exactly, it would, if you're just looking at what accounting, bookkeeping services,
Right.
What does bookminders cost, and then what could it be done for, on the URA side, it's just a portion of what you show here is the accounting function. It seems to me.
It is. So bookminders is $11,000 for their accounting services, and you have to look at for the URA side, the way the agreement is written, you're getting all these services for the $9,600, and it's $11,000 just for the bookkeeper.
Right. Yeah.
Director Wilson, if you'd prefer, we can set up a meeting to go through all this in more detail with you, so we can comb through those.
No, I don't need to review this anymore. I do think we might need to have some additional information on a budget, because it's been many, many months since we as a board looked at that and talked about the sources of funding and the budget for the year. So maybe, some sort of information and discussion on that prior to the next meeting would be useful.
Absolutely.
If that's the schedule for I don't know if that's would it be done by the next meeting? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying we don't have one, so.
Yes, and we will have a budget to present to the board at the next meeting.
Any other conversation? If not, there's no board actions on this recommendation, is there not? There is.
We can vote for financial accounting services at this board meeting or the next board meeting, depending on how informed our board of directors feels.
And so what are we actually voting on? Would be voting on the book. We already have a version with the URA, right? So now we're voting on what exactly?
We will make a decision whether to pursue bookminders for the land bank's financial services or adhere to the cooperation agreement and the terms set forth between the PLB and the URA to provide financial services.
And what is the staff recommending?
The staff recommendation in your September board package recommends that the URA accounting department better meets the needs of the land bank and is able to provide the board of directors with the information they require.
So if we continue with the URA, we actually don't need a vote at all, right? We only need to vote if we're going to do something different. Correct. All right, so we'll continue. I think will give us a month for both Wanda and other board members who want to pursue this to give some thought, and then we can reconsider it at the next board meeting. And so we are not, so that whatever change we make is with everyone's eyes wide open. That brings us to
Point of clarification, so if we continue with the URA's accounting services, we don't incur that roughly $11,000 fee for bookmark, so it's also a savings.
correct.
Right.
Thank you. That
Yeah,
takes it.
I'm fine with staying with the URA. I don't need to go to bookmongers. I'm not saying that wasn't my comment. My comment was what Ms. Carter had also said. You know, we're getting more services, and the accounting is only a portion of what's shown here, not the entirety of. So you're not really comparing 9,600 to 11,000. It's a lot less. So I don't have a problem staying with URA. If no action is needed, then that's fine. It would, you know, if the other issues around the billing being done as we requested and seeing the full cost can be, you know, the URA needs to bill, and then that needs to be shown on the accounting reports that we get as board.
Yeah, I think the staff is duly noted that sort of concern, and will modify our financial reporting to account for that concern. Okay? Or if not, I'll direct them to do it.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
We need to make a motion to table this till the next meeting to finalize the discussion on what we want to do, or not?
No, we don't have to take any action at all at the moment. We're good. All right, that takes us to legislative updates.
On hand, we had David Geiger from
David.
the URA to provide us with some updates.
You sit there or here, either one's fine. That's fine.
Hello, David Geiger, Senior Advisor, URA. I'm here to provide the Pittsburgh Land Bank legislative update for September 2022. As the legislative session winds down to an end, it's really important to focus on priorities. I think it is fair to say for this board that a priority has been and will continue to be Senate Bill 811 until it passes. This is the amendments to the MICDL legislation that our chair has discussed previously. I'm pleased today to announce that it did pass the House Urban Affairs Committee on Wednesday of this week. I would like to thank Chairwoman Brown for putting it up for a vote, and for all members of the committee for a unanimous vote of support in committee. Of course, I'd also like to thank Senator Fontana and his staff for their leadership on this issue, as well as URA board member Representative Innamorato for her support in the House as well. We're hopeful to see this move through final votes on the House floor before the session ends this year.
So then what does it need? Is it, after it passes the House, it doesn't go to the Senate, or what's?
The legislation already passed the Senate unanimously. It's now in the House, and after a House committee vote, it will require 2 more affirmative votes on the floor, assuming there are no amendments, as well as a trip to the Appropriations Committee in between those votes, where I would expect an affirmative vote out of the Appropriations Committee.
So it seems that the delay was to get it out of committee. That once it's out of committee, it pretty much is going to get passed. Is that what that's what your thoughts are? You never know in Harrisburg.
Yeah, I was going to say, you never know. I am very hopeful, though. I am hopeful. I have seen this legislation move pretty far. I would be very disappointed if it died on the floor at this point. There are certainly enough legislative days scheduled for the House to be in session. So the future looks bright for this, and we will continue to push it from the Pittsburgh Land Bank, as well as the Urban Redevelopment Authority, and an entire coalition of supporters of this legislation.
So it really only affects Pittsburgh? This bill basically only affects Pittsburgh?
This bill is written in a way that empowers all land banks within second-class counties, so any land bank in Allegheny County.
Okay. Sure.
Is there a possibility to send the board members or myself, the sponsors on these bills, and who's
Let me lobby. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send more information.
Next. Anything else about that bill, the other bills?
I don't think we need to review all the other bills. I don't expect any of them to pass this session.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for your work as always. That takes us to new business. Any conversation about new business? Seeing no, yes.
I just have a request, actually. I was talking recently to Emily Woodard at the Tricog Land Bank, and she was really raving about the conference and a lot of the things that they learned. And I wondered if we could have a brief, presentation about either lessons learned or some key takeaways, some potential partnerships at one of our upcoming meetings.
I actually think that, I was going to say this to staff later. I think that should be rolled into what we probably need to do moving forward is to have probably some quarterly board training, probably on a quarterly basis, so that that would be a part of a quarterly training. I think we need to design a quarterly. Some of the other boards I'm on, like the Housing Authority Board, that's a sort of our protocol, is we have a quarterly training. The word training sounds a little more intense than it is, but it really does, what it really does is it gives us time in a very informal way as board members, because we can't do that in all settings, but we can in a training place. We can kind of get our perspectives and talk to staff, get to know Sally, just sort of learn more about what our goals are and what's the process and those sort of things. We can do that in a training session. So I agree with you 1,000%. And I'm going to sort of ask staff to start thinking about, I may be wrong about the time period, but to start thinking about periodic training opportunities for board members. In my sense, it would be either right before or right after the board meeting. Right after is probably a good time, rather than right before, because it's lunch before. But to think about some training opportunities right after this meeting on some regular basis, if you could start thinking about what that could look like. And I'll help you think about it too, because I've given that some thought. Dr. Bay?
Connected to your earlier point about the value that we got from attending that conference, I think that's probably something that we should share with the public. It seems though we went and spent 4 days at the Hilton in Chicago. What's the value add? Because I think we all agree that that was an important conference to attend.
So let's do both. Let's then, for next board meeting, have a briefing on air, because we have time, about what happened and why those sort of sessions are significant, and we can have those who went play a part. And then in addition to that, although maybe not next meeting, but we should also start to think about training and technical assistance to the board members on a regular basis moving forward. So we can do both at the same time. Are we agreed? I'll do this by common consent. We'll do that, okay? Any other concern? If no other concern, I'll entertain a motion. Well, no, public comment. We have public comment both before and after our meetings. I have not seen anyone online, and there's no one, I don't think, in the chamber, but I will at least say it twice. Is there any public comment? Is there any other member of the public who wants to address this board meeting? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. We are adjourned.